Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. I'd like to take a quick moment and thank the elite members of the channel. Thank you for your dedicated and ongoing support. I deeply appreciate it. With that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Unsolved Mysteries, Volume 25. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first case, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. On behalf of myself and the family here at Back to Ashes, my heart and love goes out to all family members affected by these cases. I really do hope you can find your loved ones or your missing friends at some point, or at least gain some closure. And I still deeply feel like those that are missing need a voice, and that is what I'm here to do. Onward with the cases. The murder of Susan Asen. Early life. Susan Asen was born in the 1950s to Daisy Quoquat and John Louis Asen. She was raised on the Asubishaweagong First Nation in northwestern Ontario with her 10 siblings, including Irene, Darlene, Linda, Floyd, Maxine, Catherine, Ira, Joyce, and Josiane. By the time she was 20 years old, Susan had begun to struggle with drugs and alcohol. She also suffered from violent fits on occasion. She would frequently travel to Kavanagh, Ontario, located approximately 80 kilometers away, to visit friends and family, with Joyce saying her sister's life was in Kavanagh. Murder. On June 13, 1974, Susan traveled to Kavanagh to spend the week with friends and family. She disappeared 4 days later, on June 17th, with her body eventually being found 14.8 kilometers north of Highway 17, just off Jones Road. She was reportedly only wearing her socks. The Asen family and the Ontario Provincial Police differ on what they say was Susan's cause of death. The official cause is that she was stabbed to death, with signs of blunt force trauma to her head, while the family claim she was either stoned to death or killed with a screwdriver. Investigation. Prior to her own death in February of 2001, Joyce told CBC that while Susan was living what many would consider a high-risk lifestyle, she can't understand why someone would have taken her life. Very few leads have been collected over the course of the nearly 50-year investigation, with Joyce claiming it had been a long time since anyone with the OPP had properly investigated the case. She also revealed that officers no longer communicate with the family. In response to the claims, the OPP stated that they never close an open homicide case. Case contact information. The OPP is currently offering a $50,000 reward for any information that leads to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Susan's murder. Anyone with information regarding the case is asked to contact the Criminal Investigation Branch of the OPP at 1-888-310-1122 or the Kavanagh Detachment at 1-807-548-4434. Tips can also be submitted anonymously via Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. The disappearance of Shannon White. Early life. Shannon White was originally from Ontario, Canada. The daughter of Gerald White, she's relocated to Bestwick Court in the lower Sahalee neighborhood of Kamloops, British Columbia. She rented a basement suite in the home of Matt Hatch and his family, with whom she got along with. A lover of the outdoors, Shannon had a 13-year-old dog that she took everywhere with her. She was also very active on social media and was a beloved mother of the Kamloops Jeep community. To make ends meet, she worked as an accountant at Kamloops Hyundai, located on Notre Dame Drive. In 2018, Shannon split from her husband. While she'd entered into a relationship later that year, things didn't work out, with the breakup said to have been particularly rough. Disappearance. Shannon left her basement apartment for work at 8 a.m. on November 1st, 2021. She was seen by her landlord, who noted she was wearing a black hoodie. He'd spoken to her the previous night after bringing her leftover Halloween candy and later told police that nothing seemed amiss. Around the time she left for work, Shannon also sent a text message to a friend. Shannon was supposed to arrive at Kamloops Hyundai at 8:30 a.m., but failed to show up. She hadn't informed her employers that she'd be late, and no one could reach her when they tried to contact her. Both of these were out of character for the 32-year-old. The following day, police officers found Shannon's Jeep parked in downtown Kamloops in the 200 block of Nicola Street, near 3rd Avenue. It was outside of the Sacred Heart Cathedral, across the Royal Inland Hospital, and was approximately 1.3 kilometers from her residence. Notably, the pink flower that normally sat above the vehicle's spare tire was missing. The search. Upon being notified of Shannon's disappearance, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, and Kamloops Search and Rescue spent 2 weeks searching several areas across the city. Some 10 days after her Jeep was located, Mounties were seen searching an area west of Kamloops, as well as a trailer belonging to her ex-boyfriend. It had been parked at the Silver Sage Trailer Court on the Kamloops Reserve. Shannon's ex-partner hasn't been publicly named as a suspect in her case, but following the search of the trailer, investigators hauled away 3 trucks. While official search efforts have died down, the all-volunteer search, rescue, and detection Canines of BC, or SRD Canines, have continued to conduct searches in areas of interest. Shannon's father has also traveled to Kamloops to search for his daughter. According to the RCMP, whoever was driving Shannon's Jeep on the morning of November 1st, 2021, was seen heading west along the Trans-Canada Highway towards Inks Lake around the time she was supposed to be arriving at work. They drove for 45 minutes. It was also revealed that the vehicle was spotted at around 5:30 p.m. that evening, some 23 minutes from Kamloops, heading north past Rayleigh on Highway 5. The Jeep was then seen returning south about 45 minutes later. Shannon's landlord and his wife were questioned early on in the investigation. Fingerprints were also taken from the residence. On the first anniversary of her disappearance, the Jeep community in Kamloops held a memorial ride for Shannon. Her friends and loved ones also helped maintain the Facebook group, Missing Shannon White. Little information has been released regarding the investigation into Shannon's disappearance, with the RCMP citing the ongoing nature of the case. It's currently being handled by the Serious Crimes Unit of the Kamloops Detachment. Details. Shannon White went missing from Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada, on November 1st, 2021. She was 32 years old at the time and left her residence in her black 1997 TJ model Jeep, license plate KAO22N, which has since been located. The vehicle had a turquoise palm print decal on the driver's side mirror and a similar colored Wanderlust decal on the passenger side of the hood, with a circular pattern between the words. Shannon is described as fair skin with blonde hair and blue eyes. She stands at 5'5" and weighs 180 pounds. She's known to sometimes wear glasses, and she still has both a Medusa lip piercing and her tongue pierced. There are several large tattoos on her arms, including a portrait of her dog, Buddy, who has since passed. Case contact information. The RCMP is currently treating Shannon's case as suspicious with foul play suspected. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Kamloops Detachment of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police at 250-828-3000. The disappearance of Brenda Gail Lampert. Early life. Brenda Gail Lampert was born on December 26, 1969, in Williamson, West Virginia. From a large family of 7 children, she was described as a free spirit who had a big heart and an outgoing spirit. A tomboy, she was playful and mischievous, with a penchant for exploration. One of her favorite places to visit were the mountains that surrounded her town in which she grew up. While a smart girl, Brenda never had an interest in school and was allowed to drop out at 15 years old on the recommendation of her principal. In 1986, Brenda married Raymond Lampert, a co-worker of her brother, Tim. They were employed by the local chicken factory. While a devoted stay-at-home wife and mother to their 2 children, Krista and Raymond Jr., Brenda suffered regular abuse at the hands of her husband, with her family noting rings around her neck from him strangling her and frequent black eyes. On July 8, 1992, Brenda had filed a domestic violence complaint against Raymond with the Mercer County Sheriff's Office. While she dropped it in 2 days later, there were signs their marriage were nearing its end. She scheduled an appointment with a divorce lawyer on July 30th, and Raymond had since moved out and was living with his parents in their 200-acre mountain property. Disappearance. On July 16, 1992, Brenda held a birthday party for her infant son at their Bluewell, West Virginia home. Family and friends were invited, including Raymond, who'd brought the cake. According to attendees, there was noticeable tension between the pair, and it's speculated that the cause was the presence of Brenda's cousin, Tammy, who was having an affair with Raymond. Raymond left the gathering with the children at around 8 p.m., despite Brenda wanting Krista and Raymond Jr. to stay with her. By 9 p.m., the last of the guests had left the Windmill Hill road property. The following series of events were based on witness statements, including Raymond. According to one of Brenda's sisters, Raymond stopped by her house the next day to say his wife had been missing since around midnight, despite her personal belongings and car being left at the residence. He claimed to have called their mother, who'd promised to call Brenda, but it's unknown if one was made. Upon speaking with Raymond, 2 of Brenda's sisters drove to her home to see if everything was okay. They, too, noticed her car in the driveway, and while the front door was locked, they were eventually able to enter the residence, where they found signs of the party the previous afternoon, but no Brenda. Depending on the source, either Brenda's family or Raymond were the ones to report her missing to the authorities. Fast forward to January 14, 1993, when another individual disappeared from the local area. Mark Anthony Cook was last seen walking towards U.S. Route 52 after leaving Pedro's Bar at the Airport Square Shopping Center at around 3 a.m. The 24-year-old, who was reported missing by his mother's boyfriend 4 days later, reportedly knew Brenda. Investigators believe the two cases could be connected, with foul play suspected in both. The search. Raymond was immediately considered a person of interest in Brenda's disappearance. When spoken to by the investigators, he claimed his wife had run away with a man named Mike and abandoned him and the children. When asked if he had had any involvement, he denied any wrongdoing. Brenda's aunt, Bonnie Patterson, was interviewed and recalled an interaction she had with Krista, who said that Raymond and her grandfather had been on and off the mountain around the time Brenda went missing. The Lampert family had owned a sawmill property, and when asked by investigators if they could search it, Raymond dodged the question. Tammy told investigators that she'd heard from Raymond's sister that he and his father had been at the sawmill that night Brenda went missing. Within a week of her disappearance, Tammy had moved in with Raymond, and the two eventually married. She'd believed her husband was innocent for a while, but he soon became abusive towards her. This, paired with Brenda's absence at major events in her children's lives, has since led her to question his version of events. Brenda's home was searched, and while everything appeared okay, it was noted that the bedroom was a mess, and a suitcase had been packed. The latter was believed to be related to her pending divorce. Polygraph tests were conducted early on in the investigation, with one unnamed male suspect failing the one administered to him. A number of potential sightings of Brenda was reported soon after she went missing, with the most promising coming from a pawn shop in Princeton, West Virginia, and a grocery store in Bluewell. Unfortunately, none were proven to be the 22-year-old. In 2003, a tip came in which stated that Brenda and Mark's bodies may have been found in a pond off U.S. Route 52, about a half-mile south of the Airport Square shopping center. Significant efforts were undertaken to confirm if their remains were there, including an attempted draining of the pond and the use of a diver and underwater radar and video equipment, but nothing was found. Brenda was legally declared dead in 2022. Her sister, Christy, had publicly stated that she believes the 22-year-old was murdered and her body hid on a property near Mercer County. The Aware Foundation has since become involved in the search for Brenda. In 2023, the organization erected a billboard about the case along U.S. Route 52. Details. Brenda Gail Lampert went missing from her residence on Windmill Hill Road in Bluewell, Mercer County, West Virginia, on July 26, 1992. She was 22 years old and was last believed to be wearing a short-sleeved denim t-shirt, blue denim shorts, and black shoes. At the time of her disappearance, Brenda stood at 5'2" and weighed approximately 110 to 115 pounds. She had curly, shoulder-length black hair, blue eyes, pierced ears, dark-colored freckles on her shoulders, a birthmark on the back of her left leg, and a 1-inch scar on her right wrist. She'd previously had her tonsils removed. Mark Anthony Tony Cook went missing from the Airport Square shopping square in Bluefield, Mercer County, West Virginia, on January 14, 1993. He was 24 years of age and was last seen wearing a black t-shirt, a blue denim jacket with a drawstring, and riding on the back bleached blue jeans, black tennis shoes, and a white baseball cap. At the time of his disappearance, Mark stood between 5'5" and 5'9", and weighed somewhere in between 135 to 140 pounds. He has brown hair and green eyes. While several sources, including the West Virginia State Police, have stated that the pair were in a relationship at the time of Brenda's disappearance, her family has said that they weren't that close. Case contact information. Currently, both cases are classified as endangered missing, with foul play suspected. Brenda's DNA and dentals are available for comparison against any human remains that may be found. Anyone with information about either disappearance is asked to contact the Mercer County Sheriff's Office at any of the 4 telephone numbers: 304-487-8364, 304-487-8301, 304-425-2274, or 304-487-8365. The disappearance of Barbara Cotton. Early life. Barbara Louise Cotton was born on November 10, 1965, in Tioga, North Dakota, to Louise and John Cotton, the 8th of 8 children. Her parents divorced when she was just 7 years old, leading her, Louise, and 2 of her siblings to relocate to Williston, North Dakota. While strong-willed, Barbara was described as being quiet and soft-spoken. That being said, she wasn't a pushover. She worked at the country kitchen and was saving up to move into an apartment with her friend Diane when they both turned 16. She and her mother didn't always get along, and Barbara was looking for some space. Disappearance. Barbara was last seen leaving the Cakes and Cones restaurant on Main Street in Williston during the evening hours of April 11, 1981. She'd had dinner with her boyfriend, Stacy, and another person, possibly her mother. Following the outing, Stacy offered to walk Barbara home, but she declined. He watched her walk down Main Street to Recreation Park, at which point he lost sight of her. The location was about 5 blocks from her residence. It's reported that Barbara may have attended a party at the 18th Street Apartments that same night. Louise reported that she'd spoken to her daughter after running home from work at around 11 p.m., and that Barbara had said she planned to return home later that night and go to work in the morning. According to a court document filed by Louise, Barbara was last seen by a friend walking away from the Plainsman Hotel at 12 o'clock a.m. on April 12th. At 4 p.m. that afternoon, she called the Williston Police Department to report her daughter missing. At around 1 p.m. on April 13th, Louise called the police again to inform them that Barbara may be with Stacy in room 205 at the Pioneer Hotel in Scobie, Montana. Officials searched the location, but neither individuals were there. Investigation. Barbara's disappearance was originally investigated as a runaway case, meaning a missing persons report wasn't filed for several days. Prior to her going missing, Barbara didn't take her paycheck or any of her personal belongings. Her brother, with whom she was very close, said she'd never discussed plans to leave home, and no one in the family believes she would have run away. The authorities now believe she may have been abducted, but there's little documentation as to the extent of the original investigation. Barbara's childhood friend, Sandy Evanston, remembered Louise calling her family's house in the early hours of April 12, 1981, asking if she'd seen her daughter. She later overheard Louise and her own mother discussing the case and learned the former had been the one to have attended dinner with Barbara and Stacy. Stacy left North Dakota for Montana within a day or two of Barbara's disappearance. While he was described by former classmates as a nice guy. His family said he was prone to violent outbursts. They also revealed that he'd been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia after being discharged from the U.S. Navy. On July 15, 1981, Stacy was arrested in Malta, Montana, for disorderly conduct. He hung himself in his cell in the early hours of the following morning. Several extensive searches have been conducted over the years, but none have located Barbara or any evidence of her whereabouts. The investigation has led Louise across the United States, and while her daughter's DNA has been tested against numerous Jane Does, there have been no positive results. In 2021, a billboard featured Barbara's image and information about her disappearance was put up along U.S. Route 2, heading north through Williston. Details. Barbara Louise Barb Cotton was last seen in Williston, Williams County, North Dakota on April 11, 1981. When she went missing, Barbara was 15 years of age, stood at 5'2", and weighed 100 pounds. She had brown hair and hazel brown eyes. She requires glasses. She was last seen wearing a blue jean pullover blouse, a light tan summer jacket, Wrangler brand jeans, and rust-colored suede loafers. Barbara's ears are pierced, and her left lobe is noticeably longer than her right. Her teeth were said to be in good condition, with some metal fillings in several places. She has a pronounced S curved in her spine, which causes her to walk with a limp, and there's a mole on her upper right side of her chest. Like many her age in 1981, she smoked cigarettes. Case contact information. Barbara's case is currently classified as endangered missing. Her dentals and mitochondrial DNA are available for comparison. If anyone with information regarding Barbara's disappearance, they are asked to contact the Williston Police Department at 701-577-1212. The puzzling disappearance of Jacob Kavanagh. Young father inexplicably vanishes. On the evening of March 31st, 2010, 31-year-old Jacob Kavanagh vanished after playing frisbee golf with a friend. Within days, evidence would come to light, indicating that he had driven over 1,000 miles, ending up in Sweetwater, Texas, before finally disappearing altogether. But what compelled this responsible and family-oriented man of 2 children to suddenly leave without telling any of his friends and family? And what became of him after that? Who was Jacob Kavanagh? A member of the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, Jacob "Jake" Kavanagh was born on October 6, 1978, in Michigan, and is one of the 10 children. Growing up, Jake was an outdoorsy, athletic, and happy child. He was a joker, but serious. He was, very serious about making sure things were in their place, and things were clean and easy to find. Otherwise, a joker. His mother, Mavis Klaus, would later remember. Jake and his girlfriend Rachel got married right out of high school, and the couple went on to have 2 sons together. He was a devoted father, perhaps because his own father was often absent while he was growing up, and he didn't want that for his own children. Mechanic and student. Jake worked as a master mechanic at Dave's Garage, the top repair shop in town, and he was also a member of the National Guard. In addition to these responsibilities, he was a technical science student at Northwestern Michigan College, and just 3 weeks shy of graduation when he went missing. Jake, who loved to help people, was considering pursuing a career in nursing. He was a very good friend. He's the proverbial give you the shirt off my back kind of guy, said Sandra, Jake's older sister. Following the end of his marriage in 2008, Jake moved back in with his mother and was working full-time as well as attending school. Frisbee golf with Gary. Jake met his friend Gary Whitting to play frisbee golf on the evening of March 31st, 2010. According to Gary, their conversation was casual, and Jake was in a good mood. Jake was in great spirits that day. He didn't seem upset at all and never mentioned that he was having any problems. Afterwards, Jake dropped Gary off at a local beachside park. Gary suggested that they go out to a bar together, and Jake declined, explaining that he needed to go home and study. Yet, he never made it home that night. His mother knew immediately that something must be wrong, because it was so out of character for Jake to not show up or let her know that he was going to be gone for a while. Jacob reported missing. She reported her son missing on April 2nd, but was told by law enforcement that, because he's an adult, they couldn't file a missing persons report on him until he had been gone for at least a week. Until then, all Jake's family could do was try to get in contact with him. However, their calls were unanswered and always went to voicemail. Their concerns only intensified when Mavis received an alert the next day that a $40 withdrawal on her son's bank card had been declined at an ATM because of insufficient funds. It was unlike him to allow his bank to drop that low. The family immediately went back to the police and showed them the bank statement. The authorities finally agreed that something was off and put the family in contact with the county sheriff's department. The official investigation into Jake Kavanagh's disappearance was about to begin. Investigation yields few clues. In an attempt to track Jake, the first course of action for investigators was to obtain his phone and bank records. As they pieced together Jake's moments in the days since he went missing, they became even more puzzled by his vanishing act and struggled to discern the motive behind it. Detective Jason Polzin said, "He loved his kids. He was a family-oriented person and not one to just up and take off. That's what ultimately got the law enforcement involved and a police report going a few days later." Tracking Jake. It turned out that the $40 withdrawal attempt was made at 10:31 p.m. on March 31st at an ATM in Cadillac, Michigan. Video surveillance from April 1st showed Jake in his 2002 silver Chevrolet Malibu at a gas station in Mattawa, Michigan, still wearing the work clothes that he was last seen in. He was alone, showing no outward signs of distress, and no one appeared to be following him. His cell phone was used for the last time on April 1st. He received financial aid from his schooling from the National Guard and was required to call it in at the beginning of every month to confirm that he was still a student. This was the purpose of his final call, during which the phone pinged off a location near Springfield, Missouri. From that point on, his phone was either turned off or the battery had died. He left his charger at home. At approximately 3:30 a.m. on April 2nd, an officer spotted him sleeping in his Chevy Malibu at a rest stop in Arkansas. The police officer ran his information, which confirmed that he was Jacob Kavanagh and a valid driver's license. Again, he was the sole occupant of the vehicle. That same day, he arrived in Texas, which he purchased gas twice using his credit card, once in Fort Worth and again at 4:49 p.m. at a 7-Eleven in Sweetwater, Texas, nearly 1,400 miles away from Traverse City, Michigan. His card was never used again after that. An examination of the surveillance footage from that 7-Eleven produced inconclusive results. While the card definitely looked like his, the man in the video couldn't be positively identified as Jacob Kavanagh. In Sweetwater, Texas, it does appear that it's a silver Malibu that pulls into the gas station, and there's a lone occupant again. You catch a brief glimpse of him. All you can tell is it's a skinny male. He's got a white t-shirt on, khaki shorts, and he's got white socks showing up over the top of his boots. And you never really catch a glimpse of his head or face, said Detective Polzian. Is that Jake? Those who knew him felt that the man on the footage was dressed uncharacteristically and looked to be shorter than the 6'2" Jake. His sister Sandra stated, he was wearing cargo shorts, which I've never seen him wear cargo shorts. They're baggy and sloppy, and that's not the way he dressed. And so the clothes didn't match what he'd been wearing last. If he had to buy gas, then he wouldn't have money for clothes. That was always the question, so I'm not convinced it was him. Investigators began to wonder if it was possible that he decided to walk away from his life and start over in Mexico. However, it's worth noting that he didn't speak Spanish or have a passport with him. Additionally, there is no record of Jacob Kavanagh even entering Mexico, making a piece of information that the police would later obtain all the more disturbing. I'm not saying that Jacob Kavanagh left, but people do leave, noted Captain Dave Meacham of the Grand Traverse Sheriff's Department. Additional information. There were no gas purchases made using the card from Michigan to Texas, which led his family to wonder how he'd managed to pay for it along the way. I thought, how do you get from Michigan to Fort Worth and not buy any more gas? Questioned Sandra. Some have speculated that Gary Wittig, the friend Jake had spent time with before he went missing, might know more than he's saying. Strangely, he went quiet for a few days himself, right about the time Jake disappeared. However, he explained this by saying that he met someone the night of March 31st and went out partying with them, and that his phone battery had died, preventing him from texting anyone for a while. He's been named as a person of interest in Jake's case. Interestingly, Jake made a 57-mile detour to Ardmore while in Oklahoma for unknown reasons before once again heading in the direction of Texas. Though Jake had never had a problem with drugs as far as anyone knew, law enforcement and his family speculated that someone may have approached him with the means to quickly make some extra cash, possibly by picking up or transporting illegal narcotics. However, nothing has ever been found to support this theory. Jake was never seen or heard from again after his card was used in Sweetwater. So, what happened to him? Jacob's mysterious journey, a timeline. The Unsolved Mystery podcast episode about Jacob's disappearance, Jacob's Last Drive, episode 78, breaks down the timeline of the last known movements of Jacob Kavanagh at the end of March and beginning of April of 2010. March 31st, 8:30 p.m. Jacob is last seen by someone who knows him when he drops off his friend Gary Wittig after playing frisbee golf. March 31st, between 8:30 and 9 p.m., Jacob's credit card is used to purchase gas at a Traverse City gas station, and a little while later, the card is used 17 miles south of Traverse City at a general store, presumably to buy snacks and a drink. March 31st, 10:31 p.m., $140 is withdrawn from Jacob's bank account at an ATM in Cadillac, Michigan, about 40 miles further south. There is no video evidence to verify whether this was Jacob. April 1st, 2 a.m. At a gas station near Kalamazoo, about 145 miles south of Cadillac, video surveillance captures what investigators believe to be Jacob in his silver Chevy Malibu. He appears to be alone and still wearing his work clothes from the previous day. April 1st, 2:36 p.m. The last known use of Jacob's cell phone when he calls the automated phone system of the National Guard office. The call is later traced to Springfield, Missouri. Jacob is now 800 miles away from home. April 2nd, 12:15 a.m. Jacob's license plate was run by a police officer in Hollister, Missouri. There's no record of Jacob being pulled over, so it has been surmised by investigators that it was a routine check of an out-of-town state license plate that was traveling through. April 2nd, 3:36 a.m. A sheriff's deputy near West Fork, Arkansas, wakes up Jake, who was sleeping in his car at a rest stop. The deputy runs Jake's ID and is able to converse with him, and later reported that Jake was alone. This is the final confirmed sighting of Jacob Kavanagh. April 2nd at around 11 a.m. In Ardmore, Oklahoma, someone tries to withdraw $40 from Jacob's bank account using his ATM card. The withdrawal is declined, and this transaction is what alerts Jake's mother back home in Traverse City. It is also noted that Jake is now deviated from his southward journey and directly headed west to get to Oklahoma. April 2nd, 1:26 p.m. Jake's card is used to buy a full tank of gas in Fort Worth, Texas. April 2nd, 4:49 p.m. Jake stops again to buy gas, this time in Sweetwater, Texas. Further mysterious elements surface when considering the stop. Why did he fill up again only 3 hours after his last stop for gas? More importantly, was the person caught on the gas station security video actually Jacob? The video is grainy and it doesn't appear to be the same Malibu that Jake was driving, but observers report that the man is shorter and bulkier than the tall and lanky Jake, and he's not in the same work clothes that Jake had been wearing. Especially notable to his sister Sandra is that the person in the video is wearing cargo shorts, something she had never seen Jake wear before. 7 years later, in 2017, investigators received new information that had chilling implications. They were alerted by the National Insurance Crime Bureau that the VIN of Jacob's Chevy Malibu was flagged in Mexico. They were told that the car was likely in a scrapyard. How did Jake's car end up in Mexico? And had he been there with it? Or was the vehicle brought there by someone else? That remains a mystery. Later developments. Jake's disappearance continued to puzzle and sadden the family. They couldn't believe that he would still choose to leave them, particularly his children, without any explanation. Jake had seemed happy, with no obvious issues. "We love Jake and we need him to come home," said his mother. Jake's ex-wife, Rachel. "I'm sad for the children, especially, and I hope he does return. They talk about it a considerable amount. Xander is in therapy right now, but they're pretty resilient kids too. They're doing very well in school and things." Other odd development. In August of 2013, Rachel alerted authorities that $1,500 had appeared in her bank account from a friend of the court, a service of family court. When it was investigated, it was determined that, before his disappearance, Jacob had been participating in the Army National Guard Thrift Savings Plan. a military retirement plan, and the money had been sent from them. There was hope that Jacob may have directed the payment himself, meaning he would still be alive somewhere. But there was never a connection made to him. In May 2014, police were notified that a 2013 Michigan tax return had been filed using Jake Kavanagh's name. Local police informed the FBI, whose investigation revealed that the return was a fraudulent filing and had been run through a series of shell real estate companies. Over the years, the Kavanagh family noticed a classified ad in the local paper's Lost and Found section that had been constantly running since Jacob went missing. It read, quote, "Missing Jacob Kavanagh, last seen in TC, March 31st, 2010. Forever in our hearts, always looking for answers. www.michigan.gov/missing in Michigan," end quote. Jacob's sister Sandra thought the paper was running the ad as a public service, and when it stopped appearing, she contacted their offices to find out what happened. It turns out the ad had been placed every week throughout the years by an ex-girlfriend of Jay Kavanagh, Jacob's brother. She had been in the hospital and was unable to renew the ad, which is why it had stopped running. Sandra explained why the woman had been keeping up with the weekly ad placement. Quote, "Our family took her in for a while 20 years ago. I guess we really meant a lot to her, and she wanted to do something for us," end quote. Jacob wouldn't leave. Sandra firmly believes that he intended to return. "I don't believe he was planning on being gone for an extended period of time at all," she told the Unsolved Mysteries podcast in 2023. "He had every intention of coming back. That's my belief. It's out of his character to just pick up and go somewhere, to leave without letting anyone know, especially my mother, because, we respect my mom." Sandra continued, "He was very hands-on and present, and he would not have abandoned his children. I do think he's dead, because if he were alive, he'd be here at home right now." Jacob's best friend, Ken Baringer, expressed a similar sentiment. "I have known Jake for 10 years, and this is not the Jake I know. We spoke almost every day. My family loved him. Jake was always smiling and never seemed stressed. If he had problems, he would have told me." There have been no further developments in this case, but police are hopeful that the renewed interest generated by the Unsolved Mysteries podcast may produce new leads and that Jake Kavanagh's disappearance will one day be solved. Sandra spoke about the heart-wrenching difficulty of being left with no answers. "It's just that not knowing that just as a cancer and it eats at you, it's just the hardest part. We just hold on to that hope that we'll hear something, but every day it gets harder." And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true unsolved mysteries. I apologize if this one's a bit short, but there will be longer ones in the future. So, with that being said, I would like to take this time and acknowledge the rest of the membership and the new listeners to BackToAshes. Thank you all so much for your continued and dedicated support. I've said it time and again. Without you, I wouldn't have a voice and this channel would not exist. Thank you so much. In the meantime, if you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these selections. In the meantime, please take care of yourselves. Have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.